Welcome back to the channel. So last week I introduced you guys to my latest trade, which was coffee, and I figured, you know what, 1 week passed, why not have an update and see how the trade is materializing for us. So as we look on the screen, we can kind of see our current P&L for the trade. We're currently up about $822, about 1% on the trade. Now, truth be said, this kind of falls within a wash for us in terms of performance so far. Again, these commodities can move so quickly that 1% can easily be traded up or down within just a couple minutes. Truth be said, there really hasn't been that much movement. I mean, as we pull away here, and the golden line there kind of represents my entry, at least my price level there. On Monday, there was a little bit of a pullback here. But then the very next day, on Tuesday, we actually ran up. We ran way past our entry to the point that it was about 2% above our entry. And then we pulled back. Now, if you remember from my last video, I said if we have a decisive close above this level here, about 193.35, we would likely get out because there's just no saying. You could easily make another run for the highs up there. It's really hard to tell, even though we know that there's going to be a turn coming quite soon and it's going to be very profitable. There's no guarantee that it's going to happen right now. So we got to put a line in the sand as to where we're willing to get out while we wait for a better opportunity. At least one where we can kind of put a line in the sand to trade around. Now, as it stands right now, as you guys can see, it kind of pulled back that day, right? And in the next 2 days, Thursday, Friday, still kind of traded just about there. And Friday, we had this little bit of a pullback here. Now, the dollar was, as you guys can see here, the dollar was pretty strong on Friday. So obviously that is going to be a headwind for that day for coffee or for any commodity that's obviously denominated into dollars there. Now, again, there isn't too much happening here. You can run the argument that it's currently still kind of in an uptrend here. If we pull back, kind of in an uptrend, I mean, this looked pretty bad, but we've had kind of higher highs, higher lows and so forth, another higher high. Again, really hard to tell, but we're still going to look at the Commitment of Traders report and see how the positioning has changed since last week. So we're going to pull out. We're going to go to COT report. We're going to look at two different sources for the COT report to kind of get an idea as to what's going on. Let's pick out, where is this? Coffee. Okay. And let's just look at the producers. The producers actually got more short this past week. It kind of stepped down there, as you can tell. Now, they're actually more short now than they were about a month ago. A month ago actually was right about this peak here, so they are more short than there. You can kind of see the price here. This was at the peak. So they have gotten more short, which is good for us to see that. We could look at what the market makers have positioned at. The market makers actually ended up being a bit more long. Again, obviously, it really comes down to how managed money and other reportables, how they're positioning themselves. They're positioning themselves even more long going into it. So out of the ones that ended up going long for managed money, some of them ended up getting fulfilled. Some of their trades ended up getting fulfilled by the market makers, as we've discussed, and others by the producers and the merchants. You can kind of see the difference here. So the market makers actually barely fulfilled any shorts. It was predominantly longs. Well, they've gotten more long, which means that they've actually fulfilled shorts. People trying to go short. So obviously they got to be on the opposite side of that trade, and vice versa there for producers and merchants. So again, the trade is still valid for us. What we typically want to do here as we pull out, if we just go to the legacy version of the COT, that will actually combine the producers and the market makers together, give us a cumulative figure there, and this is how it ends up looking, right? So cumulatively, as you could see, week by week for this whole year, they've continued to get more and more short, right? Non-commercials are going to be the large speculators, so leveraged money. They've, again, obviously, commercials and non-commercials are always going to be on the opposite side of the trade for the most part, and that's why it's stepping away. Non-reportables will typically be small speculators, and then sometimes just kind of like institutions that are just also hedging, and they're not in the business of speculating. Non-reportables There's not much to kind of glean from this, but the trade is still very much valid. We're going to look at some more COT data here. This is actually made by one of the market wizards, Jason Shapiro, and his COT data. If we look at this, we can see, now I'm just going to quickly explain this to you guys. This chart over here kind of shows us the absolute number, so how many contracts they're long or short. The second table shows us relative to a look back period. The look back period could be 6 months, could be 8 months, could be a year. It depends on the commodity itself. So the red represents the commercials and the blue represents the non-commercials, the speculators. Speculators have continued to get more long. The commercials have continued to get more short into it. You'd have to go all the way back to 2022 to find a similar level. But we care about a look back period much shorter than that. And if we look here, so based on the current look back period that's being used here, speculators are most long right now. Commercials are most short right now. They've actually been most short for a while, as you could see here, going all the way up this, which is why we say that it's not really used as a timing tool. But if you look a little closer here, let's see what's actually going on here, right? So commercials really got short already down here, right? But notice what's happening also. Small speculators, which are known to be the worst traders out of all of them, they also got really short into this trade. You typically do not want to trade on the same side as the small speculators, even though small speculators are on the side of the commercials. It actually makes us not want to take that trade. So we would avoid all of this. Here they're still short. Now here is where they actually get long, right? Small specs, again, this yellow line, they really get long here. Notice how the price kind of stumbles around. Again, small specs are really long here. Comms are short here. Now finally here, yes, there is a boost up. There is an additional boost up. So again, if you're just trying to short this here, you're getting punished into this whole move. Now finally here, that's when there's this pullback here. And as we began to pull back, as we look a little closer here, notice that small specs actually began to get short into this move here. And just as they began to get more and more short, or at least less long, which I'll show you guys as that in a bit, the price started to recover a little bit, but now small specs are once again getting quite long into this move, which is what we want to be seeing here. We want to see them get more long. Now what we can do here to move this data around just a little bit, just to show you what's actually going on here, right? So this is actually just showing the small spec positioning. This is where they were short. They were short right before a big pop up. Then they began to get long here. They've been benefiting from that. They're just below how long they were up there, as you could see. So if maybe next week, for example, the data comes out and they tick just a little bit above that, it's 2196 contracts. If they get the 2200, that would be max long again for small specs. So that's how that looks. And if we just take the same data and let's say we look at commercials, you can kind of see what's happening here, right? So again, you would avoid most of this because if you look, I guess it depends on the look back period that you would be using. But in this case, if you use a 1 year look back period, you would have to get below this point here, about 38,000, before you start considering a short position, right? Which would basically be right there, because this right here matches the short size from a year ago, less than a year ago. It's like 7-8 months ago. Only once we tick above that, boom, that's when we actually start hitting a peak there, right? So again, there's no set rule. It really depends on what you find works for you and what works for every commodity. But that's where we're currently in. There is one headwind for my trade, for this trade, that I want to talk about, which is seasonality. If we look at, now again, some people are going to say that this is usually discounted, which would imagine it to be discounted, but there's still tends to work to a point here, because if we look here at seasonality here, right, let's take away what's going on right now. Let's look at the 5-year average. So on average, on the 5-year, there tends to be this interim peak that occurs the 3rd week of February. The 10-year average kind of follows the same line, right? There is this bullish pop, as you could see, that tends to occur between the second to the third week of February, on average, price tends to go up. That is something that we have to keep in mind because we are going to be approaching that second, third week of February, which is why I say if, again, we start getting this upward pressure here above, let's say, 195 closing, we'll get out. We'll look for a better opportunity. It could be that, listen, small specs get even more long and things look even better for us, and maybe we get a chance to short it closer to the top from December, right? So that's something to keep in mind. If something crazy happens during the week, I'll probably just update it in the comments of this video, by the way, so keep a lookout for that if you're watching this video. Other than that, I'll probably make a video at the end of the week of next week if we end up getting out of the position for whatever reason being. But that's all I wanted to share. If you have any questions, just let me know. Leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Other than that, thank you for watching and have a great day.